Okay, after watching Heaven is for Real, I conclude that the message Sony wants to get across to us is watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, that kid is holding the action figure like half the movie. I mean, really. Heaven is for Real is directed by Randall Wallace and is written by Chris Parker based on the memoir or, nonfiction book by Todd Burpo with the help of Lynn Vincent. And this movie stars Greg Kinnear, Kelly Riley, Connor Corum, and Thomas Hayden Church. Now, Heaven is for Real actually centers around the father, Todd Burpo, who is, he does a lot of jobs in Nebraska, but mainly he is like a pastor in their little church there. And his son, Colton, suddenly gets like appendicitis, like a really bad case, and he's near death. And when he comes back to his house, he starts talking about these visions he's had of him like visiting heaven and seeing Jesus and things like that. And this actually really does shake Todd and the rest of the church a lot, so they don't really know what to believe. Now, just like with my review of Son of God, the first thing I want to talk about when I talk about this movie is that I'm so annoyed by people in like forums and stuff, especially the Rotten Tomatoes forum, which I love the website, really great content and stuff. But the users, a lot of the users are just really, really annoying because they just go up to a movie they have not seen and start bashing it for religious reasons. And again, my policy is if you're going to watch a movie that you know is going to be a religious movie, or even if you don't know it's going to be a religious movie, just leave your personal views behind. If you're a Jesus fanboy, don't let that factor into how much you enjoy it. And if you hate, religion and stuff, why would you even watch the movie? Okay, anyway, now that that's cleared out, I will admit that I actually went into this movie with really, really low expectations because the trailers just made it look so bad. I was expecting something that would be like made for TV. However, I do have to admit that this turned out to be a really, really fascinating movie, in my opinion at least. And, again, I draw the line between quality and how much I enjoy the movie because I did actually enjoy the movie. I just don't think it's very well made. And there's a lot of, stuff that I was really disappointed by because they had a good thing going, but they made all these different choices that just did not work out in the end. For one, I really liked how the movie, for a majority of this running time, was kind of neutral. It was not trying to preach at all, at least to me. It never seemed preachy. I mean, in terms of religion, and they really just kind of presented the facts and let the audience decide if they wanted to believe in stuff. However, there's a certain point where the movie clearly takes a stand. I didn't want that. I wanted them to stay neutral, but instead they begin to show Colton's visions of heaven and stuff. And the fact that they're showing the visions, it kind of makes you in the audience think, "Oh, okay, I should be buying it," when I think they should have just left all the visions out, just rely on Colton's words and people's reactions, and make up their minds themselves if they want to believe him. And there really was no need to show these visions because the CGI they used was bad, honestly. And it's unfortunate that they had to show that because the rest of this movie actually did look good. And there's also something off about the pacing. My mom also noticed it. Like it does slow down a lot, and you can tell that they're trying to fix the slowdowns by putting in like random scenes of like a fire happening and just different things happening in the small town. And they don't really work. Like you can tell they're just in there to kind of break up the pace. Although to the movie's credit, it is kind of tough to turn this into like a narrative because it doesn't really have a straight plot, doesn't really have conflict. So it's really more about trying to figure out what to believe in. And in terms of the kid who plays Colton, Connor Corum, he was hit and miss for me. Kind of more hit before he started having the visions and stuff. After when he started having the visions, it really seemed like he didn't know how to deliver these lines, so he just kind of sat there and said them. And in terms of the directing from Randall Wallace, I really think he could have been more of a risk taker because, again, I like the way they were going, not being preachy and all, but then he suddenly decides to take a side, and I would have enjoyed it more if he left it more neutral. However, I don't think this movie's bad. Definitely those things really did weigh down the whole experience for me. However, I will say that I think like 90% of the script is very well written in my opinion. Again, those parts that present the facts without preaching to us. And like I keep saying, this movie really is more about our beliefs itself. And I do think this movie is very universal. You don't have to be Christian to watch this or anything. I really like the message they give at the end because you can't really give this thing an answer. This mystery has no solution. So I like how they chose to resolve it, and it does really give a nice message to whatever belief you're coming from. And this movie isn't boring to me. It's slow, but it's not boring because dialogue's always fun to listen to. But who completely saves this movie from being bad? That is Greg Kinnear. Greg Kinnear in this movie is fantastic. I mean, not just like relatively speaking, like on his own, he is fantastic in this movie. And his character is definitely the most well developed. He's the most complex. just him being a family man, being a preacher, while at the same time having this romantic relationship with his wife, it's still kind of electric there. He really nails all these complexities because he isn't like a fire and brimstone preacher. Like when he hears about these visions, he's conflicted. He goes through his own moments of spiritual doubt and all that. And whenever he speaks, you just believe every word comes out of his mouth because Greg Kinnear is so committed to this performance. And I think he's so good that whenever he's in a scene with another person, he amplifies that person's performance also. However, in the end, despite the mostly well-written script and Greg Kinnear's performance, I do think this movie just kind of meh. It's kind of mediocre in terms of like filmmaking. Again, I'm not hating on this movie because of any like religious reason. If you hate religion, why bother even talking about this movie? I mean, you gain nothing by bashing movies. They're movies. However, I will say this movie can be very intriguing to you if you are open-minded and you're not a bigot or anything. If you really just want to kind of dig into this story that while it did really happen, I mean, this account was really told. It's still really up to the person, the viewer, the audience to decide, what he wants to believe in. That's cool. So that is my review of Heaven is for Real. Have you guys seen it? If you have, what you love about it, what you hate about it, whatever you thought, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.